live eternally and there is no death for you. And the people of hellfire will be said to them, Ya Ahl al-Nar, khuludun fala maut. O people of the hellfire, yani, live forever in this state and there's going to be no death for you. So a person should visualize this, that on that day will you be from amongst the people of paradise? Will you eternally live in paradise, or will you be the people who entered into the hellfire? And likewise we find the discussion, وَلَهُمْ فِيهَا أَزْوَاجٌ مُطَهَّرَةٌ, about the beautiful spouses which are given inside Jannah. But we find that the greatest pleasure which we mentioned previously is وَرِضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, is a pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He will ask the believers, do you want something else? Is there something else that you want? Don't you want this? Don't you want that? Forever giving it to His creation, asking them whatever they want to do. أُعْطِيكُمْ أَفْضَلٌ, should I not give you more than that? Ridwani, my pleasure is showered upon the people of paradise. That is the ultimate level that the believers will gain, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with His people inside paradise. Likewise in another place in the Quran, وَرِضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرٌ, this is the greatest thing that the believer will achieve, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we find that the believer reflects, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ. You think that the whole of this dunya has been created in vain and you will not return back to us. Everything serves a purpose, so why does not the human being serve a purpose? But verily al-insan innahu kana zaluman jahula, he is forever arrogant and ignorant. This is the example of al-insan. After being given all of these things, being promised all of these things, forever does not want to seek that paradise, doesn't want to come closer to that paradise and get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why we find that these righteous people, al-mushtaquna ila jannah, these people who are forever searching to get to paradise. Now what do they try to get into paradise? And here we find that some stories have been collected about these righteous people in a book called Sifatu Safwa ibn al-Jawzi. He mentions this story about a famous individual called Abu Qudama al-Shami. Now Abu Qudama al-Shami was a famous mujahid. He used to go out and fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And many of you have probably heard this story many times. I've mentioned it before, but just to refresh our memory, and this people who are searching for Jannah. So Abu Qudama al-Shami, he retired once in Medina. He sat in Medina and the people said to him that you are a great warrior, you have seen many things in your life, narrate to us something that you've seen, something very, very strange that will really show us the importance of going out in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what you have seen in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said that once I went to a place in Iraq. I went there to encourage people to go and fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I went to, gave various sermons and preached to the people, encouraged them to come out to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then at night he was reclined or he rested in a certain place. Nobody knew who Abu Qudama al-Shami was or where he had gone at night. And at night somebody came to his door and knocked on his door, and he thought that this is very strange, that why has somebody come to knock on my door and ask about me? So he opened the door and he found a woman wrapped up, veiled, her face was veiled, and she gave him a bag and she walked away. At first she asked him, are you Abu Qudama al-Shami? He said, yes I am. And then she gave him this bag and then she walked away. He took the bag inside and there was a note written inside there, and he opened up the bag, and inside the bag he found 2 strands or 2 braids of hair. It was the woman's hair, and she had plaited it to make it into the rein of the horse, to make it the rein of the horse. And in that letter she wrote that my husband fought in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my children as well fought in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I myself cannot go out in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I've done this action which is forbidden, the woman to shave her hair, and I've plaited the 2 hair together that you can place it around your horse. So at least if I cannot participate, at least I've done an action which would help you to participate in fighting in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abu Qudama al-Shami found this very, very strange. And next morning he got ready to go out to fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And somebody came rushing out towards him, saying that I want to join, I want to join. And then Abu Qudama al-Shami didn't see this person's face because his face was covered. He said, if you are at the age of going out, then we will take you, and if you have permission we will take you. If you're not, then you'll have to go home. So the person revealed his face. It was a boy who was maybe some 17 years old. Abu Qudama Shami said, look, go home. A face of a child said, go home. Go home and serve your parents. He said, my father has died. He was killed by Salibiyin, the Crusaders. He was killed by him. So I'm going out to fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, okay, go home and serve your mother. Go home and look after your mother, because verily paradise lies under the feet of your mother. He said, my mother is the one that sent me. My mother is the one that sent me. And you know who my mother is. Abu Qudama Shami said, I don't know who your mother is. Who is your mother? He goes, don't you remember the woman who came to your door last night? Don't you remember the woman who gave you that bag yesterday? He goes, yes, I do. He goes, that is my mother. That is my mother. So he said, okay, you can join us then and come with us in this path. So the boy said, don't look at my young age. Don't look at my young age. I have memorized the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have memorized and know the Persian language. And I'm well equipped in throwing of the arrow. And Abu Qudama Shami looked at him. Every time he's riding fast. Every time he's riding on his horse, he's mentioning Quran, reading the Quran. Strange this affair of this young 17-year-old boy. And Abu Qudama Shami doesn't really want to send him out and to fight. And then when they go to rest before they fight, the young boy says, let me go and serve you. So the young boy, he goes to collect the wood and to prepare the meal. Abu Qudama Shami and his friends are resting. Some of them, they fall asleep. And the boy is taking his time. Abu Qudama Shami, he thinks, let me go and find where this boy is. He goes and he finds the boy is sleeping. And he looks at the boy and he doesn't want to wake him up. And he finds that some of the food has been prepared. He continues preparing the meal. He looks again at the boy and he finds the boy begins to smile in his sleep. And then the boy wakes up. And the boy startles that Abu Qudama Shami, Ya Ammi. He says, my uncle, what are you doing? I'm the one that should be preparing the food, not you. Leave it. Let me prepare the food. Abu Qudama Shami says, no. But Allah will not let you do anything until you don't tell me why you were smiling. Why were you smiling in your sleep? So the boy says, the reason why I was smiling in my sleep, because I had a dream. And in that dream, I had entered into Jannah. When I entered into that Jannah, I was brought close to a palace. And outside of that palace, there was many women standing there. And they began to say, this is the blessed spouse. This is the blessed husband. And then I approached one of the women. And I said, who is this blessed husband? Or who is the blessed wife? She goes, she is inside that palace inside there. So he entered into the palace. And he saw this beautiful woman. And he goes, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not established my heart, and my mind would have been taken away from me. And as I approached this woman, and she was saying to me, welcome. And I got closer and closer to her. And when she began to talk, I began to listen to her. And then I went to touch her. She said, I am for you. But you are not allowed to touch me now. You will touch me, موعدنا غدا بعد الظهر. You will meet me tomorrow after Salatul Dhuhr. And that's when the boy said, that's when he began to smile. And that is when he woke up. So Abu Qudama Shami found this very, very strange. The next day, in the morning, after reading Salatul Fajr and reading the ayat from Surah Al-Anfal to get ready for warfare, they began to go on their expedition. Abu Qudama Shami is pushing the boy back, go to the back. He's coming forward again and again. Abu Qudama Shami is telling him to go to the back. While this debate and this discussion is taking place, war breaks out. The Crusaders of Salibiyin are beginning to attack the Muslims. War has broken out. So Abu Qudama Shami, or the boy pulls his hand away. Abu Qudama Shami goes in one direction, the boy goes in another direction. War begins to take place. The blazing of the swords, the heat of the armor. Every man is left for himself. Every man is fighting for his own self and fighting the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just before Dhuhr, the war stops. They read Salatul Dhuhr and they begin to pick up their comrades, begin to look for them. Everyone is asking about where is the friend that was with you. Nobody is asking about this young boy. Abu Qudama Shami, he begins to think, where is this young boy gone? So he begins to search for this young boy. He begins a voice saying, where is my uncle? Where is Abu Qudama Shami? He approaches this boy. He approaches this voice and he sees blood on the face of this young boy. Sees that his clothes have been cut.